Coming up, with the current UK government, the dead cats keep arriving on a daily basis. No sooner do we react to one scandal when another one comes along and makes us forget about the previous one. But perhaps Boris Johnson can explain this strategy better than I can.
I've got a brilliant new strategy, which is to make so many gaffes that nobody knows which one to concentrate on.
So they cease to be newsworthy.
They cease to be newsworthy. You completely outgeneral the media. You shell them. You pepper the media. What you do is you've got to pepper their positions with so many gaffes that they're confused. It's like chaff. It's like a helicopter throwing out chaff.
So, as an antidote to this, here is my day-to-day, blow-by-blow account of Tory corruption, incompetence, and just sheer nastiness during 2023, so that we don't forget. Stay tuned. 5th of January. After a massive backlash from the public and from experts within the TV and creative industries, the Tories confirmed that they won't go ahead with a plan to privatise Channel 4. In what must be a first for this corrupt scavenger government, they decide that the political fallout is probably not worth the chance to sell off this public asset at a bargain price to their donors and cronies. 11th of January. Andrew Bridgen, Tory MP for North West Leicestershire, is suspended from the Conservative Party for spreading misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines after posting a tweet comparing them to the Holocaust. If that wasn't bad enough, he was later found guilty of breaching lobbying rules, or, if this was a developing country, what our media would call corruption and taking bribes. He was later expelled from the Tory party and joined the rabble-rousing racist Lawrence Fox in his far-right fringe party. 23rd of January. The Commissioner for Public Appointments announces a review into the process of appointing Richard Sharp to the chairmanship of the BBC, following claims he helped then Prime Minister Boris Johnson secure a loan guarantee shortly before his appointment. Sharp later resigns as chairman of the BBC after failing to declare this connection to a loan secured by Johnson worth £800,000. 29th of January. Nadeem Zahawi is dismissed as chair of the Conservative Party after an inquiry finds he committed a serious breach of the ministerial code over his tax affairs. It emerged that Zahawi, famous for claiming many thousands of pounds on MPs' expenses for heating his horse stables, paid a £5 million penalty to HM Revenue and Customs for unpaid taxes during his time as Chancellor of the Exchequer. You couldn't make it up. 1st of March, and news of the government's COVID-19 response in the UK. WhatsApp messages suggest former Health Secretary Matt Hancock chose to ignore advice from experts in April 2020 that there should be testing of all going into care homes. Hancock's decision to ignore expert advice is considered to have led to 35,067 excess deaths. Quite extraordinary that this man remains free to appear on reality TV shows rather than being behind bars. 3rd of March. The Commons Select Committee of Privileges finds that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson may have misled Parliament over the Partygate scandal after evidence suggested breaches of COVID-19 rules would have been obvious to him. He later acknowledges misleading Parliament over the Partygate scandal, but reckons he did not do so intentionally. And of course, we believe this paragon of honesty, don't we? 26th of March, a sting operation is staged by the campaign group led by donkeys, in which former ministers Matt Hancock and Kwasi Kwarteng agree to work for a fake South Korean company for £10,000 per day, while junior doctors in England earn £140 for a 10-hour shift. 13th of April, a day of shame for two Tory councillors who probably represent the tip of a huge iceberg. First, Andrew Edwards in Haverfordwest is suspended from the Conservative Party after stating a belief that white men should have black slaves. Secondly, Sean Slater, a Bromley Tory councillor who tweeted that it was more likely a rape victim was a prostitute whose punter didn't pay. But don't call them Tory scum. 21st of April. Dominic Raab resigns as Deputy Prime Minister after an inquiry finds he acted in an intimidating and insulting manner with civil servants. The Turnip, as he's widely known across Europe, subsequently criticised what he described as activist civil servants attempting to block the work of government. 27th of April. A Brexit bonfire of regulations? Well, perhaps not so much. Government Minister and culture warrior Kemi Badenoch actually announced that the government was planning to reduce the number of EU retained laws to be repealed to just a small fraction of the total. The so-called Brexit bonfire was cancelled. Why? Because it was a stupid and unworkable idea from the start, only pushed by fringe Euro-hostile nutters like Rees-Mogg and Mark Francois, who I promise know less about UK law than anyone watching this video. 30th of April. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss is told to settle a bill of around £12,000 for excess costs incurred at Grace and Favour Chevening House in Kent during her time as profligate Foreign Secretary. 16th of May. Javed Marandi, a businessman whose foreign companies were part of a global money laundering investigation, is named as a major donor to the Conservative Party. 1st of June, Sunak's government confirms it will launch a legal challenge over the COVID-19 inquiry's demand for the unredacted version of Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages and emails. Johnson later announces he's cutting out the government anyway and directly supplying the COVID-19 inquiry with unredacted copies of his WhatsApp messages and emails, except it later turns out the relevant ones have all been mysteriously wiped from his phone. An unconvincing and ludicrous excuse that Sunak, also later in the year, makes his very own. 5th of June. The Parliamentary Standards Committee finds Matt Hancock guilty of attempting to influence an investigation into Conservative MP Steve Brine and orders him to apologise to Parliament. 9th of June. Nadine Dorries announces she will stand down as Conservative MP for Mid Bedfordshire with immediate effect, which turns out to have meant with effect after 78 days, once she received another 3 MP salary payments. 15th of June. Partygate. A report by MPs concludes that ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson deliberately misled the Commons over lockdown parties at 10 Downing Street and would be suspended for 90 days if he was still an MP. It states that he deliberately misled the House and was complicit in the campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee. 16th of June, the Daily Mail announces that it signed up Boris Johnson as a columnist, prompting the House of Commons Advisory Committee on Business Appointments to investigate whether he's breached the ministerial code by not consulting them before accepting the role. 17th of June, David Warburton, the MP for Somerton and Frome, becomes the 4th Conservative MP in 8 days to announce their resignation from the House of Commons, doing so following suspension from the party over allegations of drug-taking and sexual misconduct. 23rd of June, the government's new voter ID law results in around 14,000 people being prevented from voting in England's May 2023 elections because they did not have suitable photo ID, with unemployed people and those among ethnic minorities, purely coincidentally overwhelmingly non-Tory voters, being more likely to be turned away. The Tories clearly learning lessons from Donald Trump's Republican Party. Next, they'll be removing polling stations from poorer areas and gerrymandering constituency boundaries. 29th of June, the Commons Select Committee of Privileges publishes a 14-page report outlining what it describes as a coordinated campaign by allies of Johnson to interfere in their investigation into him. The report names 10 prominent Conservative MPs, including Mad Nad Nadine Dorries, the haunted Victorian pencil Jacob Rees-Mogg, and the despicable Priti Patel. 6th of July, the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards recommends that MP Chris Pincher be suspended for 8 weeks following an investigation into groping allegations that Boris Johnson had been fully aware of before promoting Pincher to a senior position in his cabinet. 12th of July, Cabinet Secretary Simon Case urges Tory politicians to stop referring to the civil service as the blob, describing the term as insulting and dehumanising. Again, the Tories borrowing from the playbook of Donald Trump there. 20th of July, The Strikes Minimum Service Levels Bill is signed into law and represents a blatant attack on working people, severely restricting the fundamental right to strike while forcing some people to continue working against their will. This bill is an erosion of democratic principles and freedoms and makes it more difficult for workers to negotiate to improve working conditions, pay and fair treatment. Just one more Tory measure to take power away from working people and transfer it to the oligarch billionaire class of which our current Prime Minister is a fully paid up member. 24th of July, Charlotte Owen, a former junior advisor to Boris Johnson, joins the House of Lords as its youngest life peer at the age of 30, becoming the ludicrously titled Baroness Owen of Audley Edge. People have remarked on how she physically resembles Boris Johnson to quite a remarkable degree, but the reasons for her appointment to the Lords remain a mystery. 11th of August, and Theresa Villiers, a former Minister for the Environment, apologises after revealing that she failed to declare £70,000 worth of shares in Shell, the big oil company, during her time in the role. Jesus. 24th of August, the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards rules that Rishi Sunak failed to declare his wife Akshata Murthy's financial shareholding in a childminding business correctly. Koru Kids is one of only 6 companies benefiting financially from a government pilot scheme to incentivise people to become childminders. Can you smell that? The absolute stench of corruption. Why is this crooked oligarch still our Prime Minister? 29th of August, the UK government announces plans to scrap EU-era water pollution restrictions on housing development in order to facilitate the building of more houses, but allowing just more shit into our rivers. Not for nothing are the Tories called the Sewage Party. 4th of September, former Tory Minister Gavin Williamson is told to apologise for sending bullying text messages to a colleague following the publication of the findings of an independent panel of MPs appointed by Parliament to investigate him. 8th of September, the Tories accept a £350,000 donation from Sandy Chadder, chief executive of a company accused of marketing vapes to children. 13th of September, Tobias Ellwood resigns as chair of the Defence Select Committee after posting a video online in support of the misogynist Taliban earlier in the year. 19th of September, the decision to use over £250,000 of public funds to pay for Boris Johnson's Partygate legal fees was criticised by the National Audit Office. Tories, give us our money back. 21st of September, the UK government says that no action will be taken against Boris Johnson after he was found to have made a clear breach of rules governing jobs for ex-ministers. 17th of October, Peter Bone is suspended by the Parliamentary Conservative Party after allegations of bullying and sticking his penis in a former aide's face were upheld against him. 26th of October, Crispin Blunt, the MP for Reigate, is suspended from the Conservative Party after he confirms he'd been arrested and questioned by police over allegations of rape and possession of controlled substances. 14th of November, Suella Braverman is sacked as Home Secretary, and in a letter to Sunak, she accuses the Prime Minister of failure and betrayal on key policies, the only time I've ever agreed with her. 15th of November, the British government's plan to deport migrants to Rwanda is ruled as unlawful by the Supreme Court. £400 million wasted on an unworkable policy of performative cruelty. 17th of November, newly appointed Health Secretary Victoria Atkins reckons there's no conflict of interest with her husband's job with British Sugar. She's probably not the best placed person to make that judgment, wouldn't you think? 19th of November, banished Tory and now independent MP Bob Stewart announces he will not seek re-election at the next general election following his conviction for a racially aggravated public order offence. 22nd of November, new Home Secretary James Cleverly is clearly heard describing the constituency Stockton North as a shithole during Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons. Again, the language and modus operandi of Trump is being increasingly adopted by our extremist right-wing government. 27th of November, Sunak cancels a planned meeting with Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis after he found out what the rest of us already knew, that the Greeks want the Greek Elgin marbles returned to their rightful owner, Greece. Sunak being petulant and looking out of his depth in grown-up politics as usual. 10th of December, speaking in a YouTube documentary, Conservative peer Baroness Michelle Mone says she regrets not being more transparent about her involvement with PPE MedPro, a company contracted to supply personal protective equipment during the pandemic. Michael Gove is hoping she doesn't get any more transparent about he and the Tories dished out lucrative PPE contracts at inflated prices to their donors and cronies. 14th of December, Scott Benton, Tory MP for Blackpool, is recommended by the parliamentary watchdog to be suspended from Parliament for 35 days over a very serious breach of the rules regarding standards after giving the message to the gambling industry that he was corrupt and for sale. 16th of December, Sunak travels to Italy to attend a neo-fascist rally hosted by his new love, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. They discuss how best to persecute desperate asylum seekers reaching Europe. 18th of December, Miriam Cates, hard right-wing nutjob MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge, is placed under investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards for an undisclosed reason. Watch this space. 24th of December, gaffe-prone Home Secretary James Cleverly is forced to apologise after making a tasteless joke about spiking his wife's drink with a date rape drug shortly after the UK government's announcement that it would clearly define this activity as illegal. Cleverly's Trumpian locker room talk trivialise the serious issue of drug-facilitated sexual assault, and this culture of banter about rape is probably a major factor in why incidents of sexual assaults continue to rise in Tory Britain. But on a lighter note, at the end of this scandalous year, a big thank you to all my subscribers, and especially to those of you kind enough to contribute super thanks donations towards my costs. It's really appreciated. The channel this year had nearly 2.5 million views, which is up nearly 50% on the previous year, and we've added over 11,000 new subscribers, so I guess I'll just carry on making these videos, at least until the end of this corrupt, extremist government. Please do hit that like icon, subscribe to the channel, and please share a link on your social media. Thank you.